Imagine being pulled over by the police for no reason, just because of the way you look. Can you even fathom how terrifying that would be? Well, that's exactly what happened to my family, and it wasn't just a random incident, it's part of a larger pattern. Racial profiling is a reality that millions of people of color face every single day, and it's way more common than you might think. The stats are shocking. Did you know Black Americans are 3 times more likely to be stopped by the police than white Americans, even when they've done nothing wrong? Let's talk about this. This isn't just another story, it's a personal one that hits close to home. My family had to face something that no one should ever have to experience: racial profiling. I couldn't believe it when it happened, and honestly, I'm still processing it. It was eye-opening, terrifying, and heartbreaking all at once. Why should we, just because of the color of our skin, have to worry about something so unjust? It affects not just the individual, but everyone around them, especially families. This is why I'm talking about it today. I want to shed light on this issue, and I need you to listen. It was a regular evening, just like any other. My family and I were driving home after a simple trip to the store. We were all in the car, laughing, talking about the day, when suddenly, everything changed. Lights flashing in our rearview mirror, the sound of a siren piercing through the air, my heart skipped a beat. Was I imagining this? No, it was real. A police officer was pulling us over, but why? We hadn't done anything wrong. Was it just because of the way we looked? The color of our skin? I remember the officer walking up to our car. The look on his face, it wasn't the friendly greeting I had expected from someone in his role. No, it was different. He seemed tense, almost suspicious. Before he even asked a single question, I could feel it, the judgment, the assumptions, all based on nothing but how we looked. And then, his first words? "Where are you really going?" Not a question about whether we were safe or where we were headed, but an accusation. It was as if he was implying that we didn't belong, that we didn't deserve to be on the same road, in the same place as everyone else. I tried to stay calm. We hadn't done anything wrong, right? But the officer didn't seem interested in that. No, he was looking for something more. He asked us to step out of the car. My heart was racing. What was happening? Why was this happening? He checked every ID, asked where we were coming from, where we were going. And the whole time, I could see it in his eyes. The way he looked at us like we were a threat. Like we didn't belong there. That feeling, that is what hit me hardest. It's the reality of racial profiling that many people don't understand. It's not just about the actions, it's the assumptions that come with them. But wait, it gets worse. As we stood there, trying to explain ourselves, other officers arrived. 2 more cars pulled up. 3 police officers surrounding us, just us, and the only thing that separated us from a bad situation was the fact that we were cooperative. I could feel the fear growing in my chest. Why did it feel like we were being treated like criminals when we were just regular people driving home? Why were we being punished for simply existing? The questions raced through my mind. They should have been treating us with respect, with humanity, but instead, we were being judged for something as ridiculous as our skin color. It was in that moment that I realized this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't just a cop doing his job. No, this was an act of racial profiling, and it was something we were going to have to face every time we left our home. Something that people of color face every single day. This wasn't just about one officer, one incident, it's a systemic problem that spans beyond just one person's actions. This is something deeply ingrained in society, in the way people are taught to view others based on their skin color, their background, and their appearance. What shocked me the most wasn't just the officer's behavior, but the realization that this was happening all over the country, all the time. It wasn't just us. It wasn't just one bad cop. This was part of a bigger pattern, a pattern that millions of people, just like me, have faced and continue to face every day. I started to think about the stories I'd heard, the news reports, the experiences of other families who've gone through something just like we did. I realized that this wasn't a rare incident. This was reality. And it's not just about the physical aspect of being stopped or questioned. It's about the emotional toll it takes, too. It's about the feeling of being dehumanized. Of being reduced to just the color of your skin. It's about the way you start to question your worth, your place in society. Am I not allowed to be here? Am I not allowed to drive on this road, to walk into this store, to live my life without the fear of being judged by my appearance? The emotional impact on my family was crushing. My kids, they saw it. They were scared, asking questions I couldn't even answer. Why did the police stop us, Mom? What did we do wrong? Why are you asking us these questions, when we've done nothing to deserve this? That's the pain of racial profiling. It's not just the feeling of being harassed by the police, it's seeing your children scared, confused, unsure of the world around them. It's watching them lose their sense of safety, their sense of trust in the system that's supposed to protect them. But here's the thing that kept me going. I wasn't going to let this pass without speaking up. I wasn't going to let my family or anyone else feel like they don't have the right to exist without fear. I knew that this kind of injustice had to stop. It's not enough to just be passive or silent. We have to call it out, talk about it, make it known. Racial profiling isn't just a problem in isolated incidents, it's a deeply rooted issue that we all need to confront. It's a reality that affects the lives of so many people. And it's not enough to say it's wrong, we need action. We need change. We need to address these biases and break down the stereotypes that fuel these harmful practices. Racial profiling isn't just a problem for the person it happens to. It's a problem for all of us. We all have to be part of the solution. That night, I learned that this fight isn't just about one encounter, it's about an entire system that needs to change. It's about our future, our children's future, and the world we want them to grow up in. And I won't stop fighting until we get there. Racial profiling, it's not just about that one instance with the police officer, it's a deep, persistent issue that touches every part of society. As I sat there, reflecting on what had just happened, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about one bad cop, one bad experience. No, it's so much bigger than that. It's embedded in the way society sees us, judges us, and ultimately, how we live our lives, how we have to live our lives. When you start to break it down, you realize just how deeply this goes. We've all heard about racial profiling, but how many of us truly understand the depths of its impact? It's not just about a random stop on the side of the road. It's about how people of color are often assumed to be dangerous, criminal, or suspicious, just because of the way they look. And don't think for a second that this doesn't affect lives in ways that go far beyond that moment of confrontation. It affects everything from job opportunities to the way we walk down the street, from the way we talk to the way we are seen in the world. I want you to think about this. Statistics show that Black Americans are far more likely to be stopped, searched, and questioned by police, even when there's no reason for it. According to data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, Black drivers are 31% more likely to be pulled over than white drivers. 31%! How is that possible when people of color make up a smaller percentage of the population? And this doesn't just stop with traffic stops, it's in housing, in education, in hiring practices. It's everywhere. The system has been designed in such a way that people of color are often treated like suspects, like criminals, before they've even had a chance to speak. Can you even imagine what that must feel like? To go through life constantly having to prove that you belong? And here's where it gets personal. It's not just about being stopped on the road, it's the emotional toll it takes. When I think back to the night of the incident with the police, I can still feel the knot in my stomach. My family didn't deserve that. My kids didn't deserve that. The emotional stress of being profiled, of being treated like you're a threat just for existing, is so draining. You start to wonder, will this happen again? What's next? You start questioning the safety of your own community, your own neighborhood. Are we safe here? Is it safe for my children to just walk home from school? Is it safe for my husband to drive to work? These are questions that shouldn't be hanging over any family's head, but for many of us, they are. And it's not something that goes away when you leave the situation. It stays with you. The doubt, the fear, the anger, those emotions don't just vanish. They become part of the fabric of your life, constantly reminding you that no matter how far you go, how much you try to do things the right way, the world may not always see you the same way. Take a moment and imagine what it's like to live in constant fear of being misunderstood, of being blamed for something you didn't do, simply because of the way you look. Imagine not knowing whether you'll be able to walk down your own street without being stopped or questioned. And the worst part? The worst part is that many people don't even realize the extent of this problem. It's so deeply woven into our systems and structures that many people, those who haven't experienced it themselves, don't even see it. But those of us who do, we live it every single day. The emotional toll on my family was huge. I'll never forget the look on my child's face when they asked me, "Why did the police treat us like that?" What do you say to your child when you don't even have the answers yourself? How do you explain to a young person that the world isn't always going to treat them fairly, that they might have to fight for the same rights and respect that others take for granted? It breaks your heart. It really does. You never want your children to feel unsafe. You never want them to experience that kind of fear. But for so many families, that's the reality. That's the reality we're living in. And it's not just a few bad experiences, it's happening all across the country, in cities and towns of all sizes. It's happening right now, as I speak. I began to look deeper into how widespread this issue is. Studies show that racial profiling can lead to a cycle of mistrust between communities and law enforcement. How can there be any trust if every time a police officer pulls you over, you're automatically viewed as a criminal? And when you factor in the disproportionate amount of black and brown people who are incarcerated, you realize just how destructive this kind of systemic racism is. It's not just about stopping someone on the street or at a traffic stop, it's about how these practices feed into the bigger picture of inequality. These encounters don't just end with a conversation. They end up shaping people's lives in ways we often don't even realize. They impact our careers, our relationships, our futures. And when we internalize that fear and that anger, we carry it with us everywhere we go. And the worst part? Many of us who are affected by this injustice feel like we don't have a voice. People of color often don't have the platform or the power to speak up, to fight back, or to seek justice. And this is why it's so crucial that we not only acknowledge the pain of racial profiling but that we actively work to change the system. We need to make sure everyone feels safe and respected. We need to make sure that no one has to live in fear of being treated unfairly or unjustly simply because of the way they look. This is why it's so important to continue raising awareness, to share these stories, and to ensure that the conversation doesn't stop here. We can't afford to stay silent any longer. We need to stand up for our communities, for our families, and for our children. Racial profiling is a problem that affects all of us, whether we want to admit it or not. It's time to confront it head-on, to speak out, and to demand change, for the sake of everyone's future. The turning point in this situation was when my family member calmly asked the officer why they were being stopped. The cop hesitated, clearly caught off guard. It wasn't until they questioned the stop that the officer started to backtrack. It was in that moment that my family realized this wasn't about safety or suspicion. It was about bias. That conversation, that realization, lit a fire within us to speak out and demand accountability. Racial profiling isn't just an abstract issue, it's something that affects real people, families, and communities. We need to raise awareness, educate others, and work toward change. No one should fear being stopped for who they are, and that's why we must talk about this more. Have you or someone you know ever experienced racial profiling? Drop your story in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you want to learn more about how we can fight against racial profiling, make sure to check out my next video where I'll dive deeper into how we can make real change. See you there.